It's Nolan. Now, before we get started, make sure y'all hitting that like button. Make sure y'all sharing it on your respective platforms. Let somebody know what we're doing today. Now, let's get into the show.
Yeah, more ready than ever. God bless my endeavors. Bulletproof my apparel. These blood suckers is devils. From the valley of peril, I take a peek through that barrel. Mona Lisa, my smirk, I die blended like pharaohs. The fruit you bearing is sterile. I'm an artist, my heart covered regardless. Know my flesh is fully guarded. When your homies turn informing, my pen move when it's dark like it's haunted. Flood the market, all that venom y'all be talking. Don't cry when it turn to carnage. Self-contained, elevated brain set to break the chains. Dialect is beautiful, it's elegant as Etta James. Southern King, switching up the lens, I'm on another frame. Do it for the camera, but it's real, boy, I'm Johnny Cage. Feel like the man in my city, who gon' contest it? I pick him out the studio crowd like show contestants. No aggression needed, strictly finessing. Joel and beat it, about to turn another corner to greatness. Darrell Reeves, yeah, lo and behold it. My power levels raising like my hair turning golden. Y'all sleeping like melatonin, my skills be my promotion. I brought it out the dirt like erosion. My band of brothers came together like Jonas, I'm on it. I'm fully loaded, my opponents, negative exponents. I expeditiously retire y'all like Ben Gordon. So just imagine all the punches I hold. It's like education funded for a government role. Suckers and blow when they see me. Skin thinner than Dreezy. They hating, my friends eating like buffets. No Phoebe like George and Wheezy. We moving east. Me losing is news to me. Got an appetizer full of Gouda cheese. Homie, I'm a true MC. Flow deeper than shooting threes. Boys in my hood be out for profit like they Chody Breeze. Nigga, please. We talking hustle. I'm the face of 3 brands. All I do is plot the future like I'm signed to free bands.
What's going on, beautiful people? It's the kid J Nolan here. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Industry, your number one source for music, entertainment, commentary, and breakdowns. Hope everybody's doing well out there this evening. In this video, we're about to get into UMG and their response to Drake. All right, this is their last opportunity to file their motion for dismissal, meaning that they have one more chance to plead their case to the judge to compel them to believe that this case should be thrown out. I've told y'all my opinion numerous times on this subject. I do not see this case being dismissed. I feel like there's just too much at stake for the judge to not actually go through it, for it to not be addressed before a trial. You see that they have amicus, the amicus group that's going to be, describing the context of rap battles and the context of diss records, and basically giving more understanding for the so-called defamatory words that were exchanged in the rap song battle between Kendrick and Drake. So with all of these things being accepted and brought into the fold, and the fact that discovery and all of this stuff is proceeding, I don't see the judge not bringing this to court. I don't see the judge saying, you know what, don't worry about it. I think that they actually want to see, like, all right, what is your case and how can you try to make this stand? You know what I mean? And again, I think that this is going to be a precedence-setting case moving forward in hip-hop, because if others feel like they get dissed and it files under defamation, we could see more people either suing, or we could see people opting out of the competitive nature of battling in hip-hop for this very reason. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and pull up UMG's response. We're going to get through this quickly. It's not that long of a response. I know a lot of the stuff that we've read through regarding this case has been very long-winded, but this will not be. Okay? So let's go ahead and get this thing popping. And although it says page 6 in the corner, this is actually the first page of their entry. The previous 5 pages were just table of contents. All right? So they say, Drake's opposition is a model of obfuscation. It confuses and conflates distinct legal principles, relies on conclusory allegations, and perhaps most egregiously, ignores the critical context surrounding the statements at issue, as well as the law that requires this court to consider that context. In short, Drake's opposition fails in every respect. They say this shit is completely bullshit, like we've been saying the whole time, but you got to prove it. Assessed in light of the correct legal standards, Not Like Us conveys non-actionable opinion and rhetorical hyperbole. This is particularly evident when considered in reference to the established body of defamation law, and they say defamation is one of the hardest things to prove in court anyway, where statements involving allegations of PDF activity, vitriolic diss tracks, Rappaport, and Torian. So when you see those parentheses, those are cases that they're referring to. And statements far more likely than rap lyrics to suggest factual pronouncements, Brian, or released in context, signaling far more sober analysis than a diss track, Immuno, have been deemed non-actionable as a matter of law. Drake responds to these arguments by doubling down on his argument that a handful of cherry-picked anonymous online comments authored by handles like @OhNo are evidence that millions of people saw Not Like Us as fact-based. But this argument is simply a continuation of the rhetorical hyperbole that permeates this dispute. It is not cognizable, and in all events does not convert non-actionable opinion into actionable fact. Drake's claims should be dismissed. Okay? Argument. Drake fails to state claim for defamation. They say the statements are non-actionable opinion as they referenced above. As detailed in UMG's motion, the tone, apparent purpose, and broader context of Not Like Us convey non-actionable opinion and rhetorical hyperbole, not fact. The question of fact versus opinion is a matter of law for the court and thus appropriately raised at the motion to dismiss stage. I feel like the fact that you said that fact versus opinion is a matter of law is going to have to be seen in court. But that's just my opinion. Drake first misstates the relevant standard. Quoting Goldfarb versus Channel 1 Russia, Drake contends that the actual meaning of allegedly defamatory words must ultimately be determined at trial. But the portion of Goldfarb on which Drake relies has nothing to do with fact versus opinion and instead relates solely to the distinct question of whether a statement is capable of a defamatory meaning. On the relevant question of fact versus opinion, New York Court of Appeals authority makes clear that the issue is for the court to resolve. The court must assess the content of the miscommunication as a whole, including its tone and apparent purpose, and the overall context in which the assertions were made, and determine on that basis whether the reasonable reader would have believed that the challenge statements were conveying facts about the libel plaintiff. This is an objective test based on the reasonable person standard, ID, such that even statements that are capable of being proven false may still be a non-actionable opinion when assessed in context. They refer back to Rappaport versus Barstool. Drake's next argument that a cherry-picked sample of anonymous online comments ostensibly constitutes actual evidence that listeners believed Not Like Us to communicate factual allegations fares no better. First, Drake misrepresents the Rappaport record, stating the plaintiff in Rappaport did not even argue on summary judgment that the allegedly defamatory material was fact-based on the online comments. Not so. So now they're trying to correct how Drake responded to this whole Rappaport thing, because they tried to debunk the validity of UMG bringing it into the conversation. They say Rappaport made the argument in both its initial brief, Rappaport ECF number 104 at 25, Rappaport's podcast was swarmed with thousands of negative reviews and negative comments repeating defendants' vile statements, which evidences the extent that audiences perceived Barstool's accusations as true. And his reply, Rappaport ECF number 142 at 14 and 15, the ability for defendant statements to be understood as true is further evidenced by the fact that their statements were in fact understood as such based on thousands of negative reviews and negative comments. Now remember, Rappaport tried to sue Barstool Sports for defamation in the similar fashion to Drake, and it did not go in his favor. That's why UMG is using it. This argument was squarely presented and properly rejected. Drake's authorities are likewise unavailing. In Fitosa vs. Keem 2023, the court applying California law elected to take no account of social media posts allegedly showing commenters believe the statements to be fact. So here they say you shouldn't even be taking social media commentary into consideration. Far from making Drake's point, Fitosa reinforces that such comments have no relevance. The dicta Drake cites from Palin vs. New York Times concerns the distinct issue of whether statements are capable of being proven false, not whether their tone and context indicate to a reasonable person that the statements are opinion. Belavia Blatt and Crossett likewise reinforces that online comments are themselves opinion and not properly treated as statements of fact. That's fair. I think that's fair. We all share our opinions online, and though they may coincide with truth, at their face, they're not accepted as truth because we're all just spewing opinions about what we believe. Drake's other arguments also fail. His conclusory claim that the AC plausibly, amended complaint that would be, alleges that millions, not a handful of people, understood the lyrics as factual comes nowhere close to meeting his pleading standard. The only basis he provides is his selection of approximately 60 cherry-picked anonymous comments that are inherently unreliable. Given this unreliability, New York courts have consistently treated statements made in online forums as statements of opinion rather than fact. That online commentators have an opinion about the statements of opinion in Not Like Us does not magically transform the latter into fact. Again, I think that's super fair. I'm on here reading, and at the end of the day, all I can do is share my opinion on the matter. Now, the footnotes have been very key, especially in UMG's side. So they say Drake's other efforts to distinguish Rappaport ignores the obvious similarities between the cases, and Drake's argument that Rappaport does not justify dismissal at the pleading stage, Op 12, is a red herring, as there was no motion to dismiss in Rappaport. Drake claims numerous statements from the press, commentators, and podcasts express belief in the allegations, but he cites only to 4, none of which states such explicit belief. They really just pontificate on the validity rather than saying this is accepted as true. Critically, Drake makes no attempt to address the apparent purpose of Not Like Us, which of course is a diss track in a back and forth rap battle, presumably because he recognizes that the track's purpose to out-diss Drake signals to the audience that they are hearing a highly partisan point of view, Immuno AG versus Moore Jankowski, rather than a factual assessment by a disinterested observer. The tone of Not Like Us, rife with name-calling, anger, vitriol, and exaggerated words and imagery, denotes the same. Drake's attempts to distinguish the remaining cases in UMG's motion, Opposition 1112, are wholly unpersuasive, meaning you ain't said shit. As in those cases, even as described by Drake, Not Like Us is filled with heated and absurd rhetoric. These cases further establish that accusations and rumor are typically classified as opinion. Equally uncompelling is Drake's assertion that the cover art with 13 SO icons is intended to convey fact. The very over-the-top number of icons reflects rhetorical hyperbole. See Rappaport. Drake's argument that none of UMG's cases involved allegations of PDF activity is false. In Terrain vs. Lou, 2007, the court held that statements calling plaintiff a sick PDF loser made during a World Words were non-actionable opinion, and courts routinely find that tone renders statements non-actionable even where they involve allegations of criminality. As to the broader context, this is an archetypal case where a reasonable listener would anticipate the use of epithets, fiery rhetoric, or hyperbole. Faced with this fact, Drake seeks to confine the court to a self-serving version of events. Oh, thank you so fucking much. Self-serving version of events. That should be the name of this lawsuit, in which Lamar woke up one morning and simply called Drake a PDF. Somebody at UMG been watching my shit. But this ignores reality, even as pled by Drake. Drake concedes that Not Like Us was a diss track released as part of a rap beef. He nevertheless contends the court cannot take judicial notice of multiple exhibits, including the lyrics of other diss tracks in the feud and related press coverage. But as UMG showed, Courts routinely take judicial notice of the fact that press coverage contains certain information. Steyer vs. Hartford. Media reports detailing widely documented events that plaintiffs themselves reference or generally acknowledge in their pleadings. Moreover, most of the exhibits are cited in the FAC and thus are also incorporated by reference, as in his amended complaint. Drake never acknowledges the well-established doctrines in these cases. Instead, he again relies on FITOSA, but that decision does not even mention judicial notice. Oh, all right. Moreover, FITOSA was concerned about an incomplete record. That is not the case here, where most exhibits are materials cited in the FAC, including lyrics and news coverage concerning a rap beef that the FAC acknowledges. Drake's contention that a reasonable listener would not be familiar with the feud, a ubiquitous news story, likewise blinks reality. Moreover, Drake himself cites several articles and podcasts concerning Not Like Us, all of which reference the broader feud. So he's saying, why can't we use our articles and press coverage when you are also citing podcasts and press coverage? You're going to disqualify ours, but you want to bring yours to the table, which is a running theme in this whole ordeal. Crazy, man. All of which reference the broader feud, as do the anonymous comments on which Drake so fervently relies. Jesus Christ, talk about winning a rap battle. Drake's argument that most of the AC's allegations of actionable defamation occurred after the rap battle ended again confuses the relevant legal standard. The statements at issue are lyrics in Not Like Us and imagery in the video and cover art. The question for the court is whether the context and forum in which those statements were made signal to reasonable listeners that the statements convey fact or opinion and rhetorical hyperbole. UMG's subsequent motion of those materials is irrelevant to this analysis. Finally, the authorities Drake cites for the contention that courts have rejected context arguments in similar circumstances say no such thing. In FITOSA, the court concluded that relevant context evidence was simply lacking. And in Delgado v. Sonnen, the court found the statements were not made as a part of a heated exchange filled with epithets, fiery rhetoric, and hyperbole that provides the relevant context here. At bottom, Drake's arguments appear designed to defer the question of whether the statements are fact or opinion to summary judgment while he seeks invasive and burdensome discovery. You can say that again. Drake's arguments appear designed to defer the question of whether the statements are fact or opinion to summary judgment, meaning the money he wants, while he seeks invasive and burdensome discovery, as in the contracts from the label of Kendrick Lamar and other artists and his business partners. The court should reject this ploy. So, they called it a ploy. They making it seem like at the root of it, Drake really just wants to see the contracts. He really don't give a damn. He using this as an excuse to see these contracts. The materials submitted with UMG's motion are properly subject to judicial notice, and the issue is one of law for the court to decide, particularly in light of the very real threat that claims such as Drake's chill artistic expression as powerfully articulated by amici in this matter. And I'm not surprised that he would want to see these other people's contracts because he's up for renegotiation. What better way to see somebody's contract and get a feel of what your competition, so-called competition, right? Kendrick Lamar, Taylor Swift, Nicki, Weeknd, his contemporaries in the field. I can't just get a look at their contract and see what's in it. But if we audit the company, we might be able to see how beneficial their terms are in comparison to the terms that I received on my last deal and the terms that I would like to seek in future deals. He's trying to see, hey, are y'all giving them better contracts than me, allegedly? It's a very interesting statement they made there. The statements are not mixed opinion. They say Drake's claim that the lyrics of Not Like Us imply they are based on additional facts fails because 1, the tone and context of Not Like Us do not imply factual basis. 2, the statements cannot reasonably be understood to convey undisclosed facts. And 3, the statements relate to rumors and incidents that are widely known and that Drake himself acknowledged. And that's all it is. And people say, well, Kendrick Lamar used the internet to write his diss records. Well, now you can see how smart it was for him to use the internet to write his diss records, because in the case of somebody saying, hey, this is defamation, I'm suing you, all he has to say is, man, I didn't make none of this up. This is information that's been around. It's all out there. Why can't I say anything that people have already been saying? Drake does not confront any of these arguments. As to 1, Drake has no answer to UMG's arguments in case law concerning tone and context. See Lanasa vs. Stein. His claim fails for this reason alone. As to 2, Drake again points to his selection of online comments as discussed. They provide no legal support. Drake's only other argument is to dispute that tailor-made freestyle can be interpreted as inviting Lamar to discuss rumors about Drake's history with minors, but it is impossible to see how the lyric "talk about Drake liking young girls" is reasonably subject to another interpretation. How could you interpret it any differently? As to 3, Drake creates a straw man, asserting that UMG does not show that Drake was widely reported as having engaged in conduct that would make him a PDF or a registered SO. This misstates UMG's argument, which is that Not Like Us trades on well-known and widely published rumors and controversies about Drake's involvement with minors. Drake's own statements and the articles and podcasts cited in Drake's FAC and appended to the RJN makes this plain. So they saying, bruh, even you acknowledge that you have some sort of weird communication with minors that people have explored. So why is it not okay to say in a rap song? According to case law, not according to our opinions, right? Drake does not plead actual malice. Drake selectively quotes from Palin to argue that he does not need to plead that specific individuals at UMG acted with actual malice. This is wrong. Palin explicitly notes that a plaintiff alleging defamation against a corporation must identify the individual responsible for publication of a statement, and it is that individual the plaintiff must prove acted with actual malice. So they're saying, hey, you can't just point to UMG and say that we are doing things deliberately against you. You have to point out who are the individuals or the individual that acted against you in malice, which he's failed to do. He hasn't called out anyone specifically. He claims that he has information. We haven't seen any of said information as of yet, though. Drake's own authorities also undermine his argument. Notwithstanding his attempt to rewrite his complaint, Drake has not met his standard. The best he can do are conclusory assertions on information and belief that certain people at UMG were involved or played a key role in the initial publication of the recording, image, or video. Nowhere in his 104-page FAC does Drake allege that any specific person at UMG knew the statements were false or acted with reckless disregard to their falsity at the time that that person published the statements. And another thing that's liable to protect UMG in this instance is the fact that they didn't know Kendrick was going to drop these songs, right? He was dropping these at random times. Same way he dropped his album on a random day at a random time. So that kind of removes some of their accountability towards it, because he owns his own work. He gets to move at his own pace. They share in profits. But if he didn't consult with them about the song, about the lyrics, about when it would be dropped, about how it would be dropped, then how could they have played a key role in the publication of the recording? And Drake was doing the same thing. He was just dropping when he wanted to. So unless he can prove that the heads over at Interscope, UMG, or Republic knew exactly how, when, and where these songs would drop, he's going to have problems with this whole actual malice piece. Perhaps. Let me pick back up here. Reckless disregard to the falsity, blah, blah, blah. Nor does he plead that anyone Nor does he plead that anyone at UMG understood Not Like Us to convey statements of fact rather than rhetoric and insult endemic to the genre. Drake's argument that he pleads actual malice based on the different points in time when UMG published the impugned statements fails for the same reason. To the extent any actions by UMG to promote Not Like Us since the release of the track and music video constitute a distinct defamatory statement, they do not, as discussed. Drake has made no attempt to identify the specific individuals at UMG responsible for these purported activities, let alone allege that any such individuals acted with actual malice, which would be like a planned attack to harm Drake. Okay? Drake fails to state a claim for harassment. Drake makes only a cursory argument that there is a private right of action under the New York standard. And remember, this harassment thing goes pretty deep. His sole response to binding case law holding that alternative public enforcement mechanisms foreclose implied rights of action is to deride it as circular, but under Drake's logic, virtually every criminal statute would have a private right of action, which is obviously wrong. Drake relies on inconclusive dicta in Galella vs. Onassis and cases citing it, but none of those cases grapple with the New York standard for implied rights of action, a standard that postdates Galella. And Galella itself only cited a Fourth Department case affirming dismissal of a harassment claim without addressing the private right of action issue. Drake's other arguments fare no better. He cannot cite to anywhere in his pleading where he alleges the requisite intent to harass him rather than an intent to devalue his brand. Drake also does not address binding case law that the harassment statute only criminalizes conduct without regard to content. Interesting. And not pure speech. So they're saying that harassment would have to detail something beyond putting out a song. It would have to indicate actual actions, physical harassment. I don't know. We'll see if that holds up. Drake further concedes that his claims failed the constitutional test for incitement, but asserts that this is irrelevant because Not Like Us ostensibly includes false speech. Drake cites no authority for a falsity exception to incitement, and his harassment claim concerns calls for violence against Drake, independent of falsity in any event. And nobody called for any violence on Drake. We got to be clear about that part. So that's bullshit. Lastly, Drake cannot explain how his allegations of UMG's financial purpose, whether corrupted or otherwise, satisfy the legal standard of no legitimate purpose, which requires that the sole motive be to hound, frighten, intimidate, or threaten, in which UMG didn't do any of those things, at least not to our knowledge, unless he can produce documentation that shows that they warned him of, harm. I don't see where he can prove that. The only warning that they gave Drake was be careful what you ask for in this legal situation. Drake fails to state a claim under New York general business law. Drake argues he may plead his GBL 349 claim. Okay, my bad, y'all. And explains such allegations must be accompanied by a statement of the facts upon which the belief is founded and cannot rest on pure conjecture and speculation. The case Drake cites, likewise, acknowledges that a factual basis for the assertion pleaded is necessary. As to the limited factual allegations Drake identifies in support of podcasts and Twitter posts, only one of which mentions UMG, Drake never contests case law cited by UMG, showing that these allegations are insufficient. Drake likewise cannot defend his failure to allege materiality. Drake asserts that it is enough to allege that reasonable music consumers do not assume that labels are making clandestine back-channel payments. However, merely alleging that consumers are not likely to know some fact is not enough to establish materiality because there is no obligation under General Business Law 349 to provide whatever information a consumer might like to know. Right? This isn't like Instagram where a paid promo is supposed to be displayed. This isn't like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it ain't like YouTube where they say if you have a paid advertisement in your video, they want to know about it. Because labels are supposed to pay for marketing. It's their job. It's one of the primary reasons people still go to sign with labels is for marketing, which includes relationships at radio. Tellingly, Drake's materiality argument only quotes the objective definition of misleading for 349 claims, Orlando versus Staples, but materiality is a separate element that he's failed to allege. Finally, UMG demonstrated that the two injury theories in Drake's complaint are unsustainable. In response, Drake effectively abandons both for a new theory that artificial streams boosted the recording status on Spotify, causing consumers to listen to and prioritize the recording under false pretenses, which in turn tainted the streaming data used to proportionately allocate and disperse payments to Drake. Which I still don't understand why he thought that was a good angle. Because people listen to Not Like Us, I got paid less. What? Because people like the record more? But he's trying to say they boosted, and we still have no reasonable evidence to suggest that Not Like Us was boosted. My camera wigging. That's like coming out and saying, because y'all niggas is out here listening to this artist, why the fuck are y'all listening to all these artists, man? Listen to me so I can get paid. Okay, nigga. So I'm not supposed to be interested in nobody else shit just so you can make all the money? This is unpled and therefore improper. In any event, Drake still fails to allege injury resulting from the supposed deception. He does not attempt to explain how the song's Spotify status and resulting streams are caused by UMG's allegedly false representations about the record's popularity. He further does not explain how the supposed false pretenses as opposed to the botted streams themselves cause consumers to stream the song. So even if these are botted streams, how did that lead more people to listen to the song? Which they don't concede that it is, but they say even if it was, how does that affect your money? Or who chose to stream the song? Drake's new theory also runs afoul of the rule against indirect injuries because it is both contingent on harm to third parties and remote. Drake's theory requires a boosted status on Spotify, which then led to more streams, which then led to tainted streaming data, which then led to Spotify paying Drake lower royalties. Which he's one of the most streamed artists in the entire world. So how is he losing royalties? Drake invokes a line of cases allowing a competitor to sue over lost customers when the defendant's misrepresentations resulted in a withholding of trade. And it is withholding of trade rather than any consumer subsequent purchase of a competitor's product that produces plaintiff's injury. To the extent these cases are somehow reconcilable with smokespirits.com, Drake's theory is still far more remote because it involves many further steps. And it is not based on mere withholding, but rather subsequent consumer action. More streams, as in smokespirits.com, had the allegedly deceived consumers not been improperly induced to stream Not Like Us, then Drake would have no claim to lost royalty revenue, making Drake's alleged injury impermissibly indirect. Okay. Conclusion. The amended complaint should be dismissed with prejudice. Once again, I still don't believe this is going to be strong enough to get this case tossed out. I don't see there being anything all that compelling for this judge to toss this case. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion. Some people will agree. Some people will disagree. Ultimately, I'm not a wizard. So we're just going to have to see how it plays out. But I personally believe that the judge will want to explore these allegations further before, just saying this isn't worth looking at. Now, from my perspective, I wouldn't want to look further into this shit, but I'm not a judge. I don't make my money dealing with bullshit like this. So of course, I don't want to look further into no bullshit like this. I would be bothered. But as a judge, they deal with way more frivolous shit than this on a daily basis. So I think that there are some things in this case that do need to be ironed out, and I think it will proceed. Now, do I believe that Drake will win? I don't believe so. I think that's going to be a very uphill battle for him, but I do think that he will have his opportunity to try to prove his case. That's what I do believe. All right. Let me know what y'all think of all this down below in the comments. Be sure to like and share this video. If this is your first time seeing me on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, become an insider, and I'm going to catch y'all on the next one. All right. Much love and respect, y'all. Peace.
King of my city and cul-de-sac. Coming out swinging like soldier rags. Leading my people like quarterback. Boy, I study this shit, I'm an almanac. Had to get up and grind. Knowledge is booming, I'm here to apply. Came with the chip and the dip, it just single the mind. We finna do more than survive. I need my check. Spinning the block for the Gouda. We hitting the jeweler to flood out the net. We don't do beef on computers, I'm straight out the sewer. We come when you rest. Niggas be looking perplexed, so keeping my foot on their neck. No map, I trust my gut for the quest. With drama, I'm fully abreast. I was ready for years and they doubted me. All of a sudden they tell me they proud of me. I've been dropping these haters like calories. Cross them out, I came back with some boundaries. Stand for my honor, but too raw, no corner. Packing the stick with a drummer. Wanna catch my bad, won't fumble. I done came too far to be humble.